There have been many different kinds of revolutions throughout history. They fought for different aims, employed different tactics, and espoused different ideologies. Some have been political and some social. Some have been accomplished by nonviolent demonstration, others by force of arms. Some have left an enduring legacy, whereas others have proven to be a flash in the pan. Yet despite this variety of forms, revolution has shown one constant across history: that when it inevitably fails to yield the hoped-for results, when equanimity doesn't appear, the only remedy for the revolution's failure is more revolution. If the revolution produces chaos and disorders, it's never because the revolutionary principles themselves are bad, but only because the people didn't revolution hard enough. The revolution cannot fail, it can only be failed. Either because its adherents weren't faithful enough to its principles, or because it was hijacked by evil actors bent on ruining its implementation, or because it was betrayed from within. But the revolution itself is never the problem. The revolution is sacrosanct. Its fundamentals go unchallenged. You can never go back. Now, not all revolutions fail. Obviously, some succeed, but no revolution succeeds entirely. Even successful revolutions come to a point of reckoning, where ideology crashes upon the rocks of reality, as it becomes evident that the revolution was not a panacea for all society's ills. Successful revolutions are thus followed by a period of struggle, sometimes even a secondary revolution or civil war, about the best way to implement the principles of the revolution in the face of pragmatic necessity. But still, the revolution itself is not questioned in these struggles, only its implementation. What accounts for the remarkable tenacity with which revolutionaries cling to their principles, despite the sometimes disastrous outcomes of their revolutions? Revolution requires a remarkable level of investment. Humans are, after all, conservative creatures. We like predictability, routine, and stability. If we have these things, we are generally willing to tolerate a degree of inefficiency or injustice as a necessary trade-off. It thus takes a considerable degree of personal and social momentum to shake off the turpitude of human conservatism and attempt to upend the status quo, especially in the face of hostility. Revolution, therefore, requires a total commitment. For a revolution to succeed, it does not need supporters, but believers. This is why revolutions historically have appropriated religious symbolism. They have their own creeds, hymns, martyrs, holy days, and sacred symbols and rituals. The risk of blood and fortune requires nothing less than the zeal of a convert. Revolutionaries thus have given a kind of religious submission of mind and will to their cause. But what happens when you submit yourself to an ideal in this way and it fails? The hardest thing for any human being to do is to admit they were wrong. Not just wrong, but duped. To admit that you put your intellect, will, and resources at the service of an ideology incapable of delivering what it promised. It makes us look stupid. Even more so if the revolution has cost us, if we have suffered in some sense because of it. Then, well, not only do we look stupid, but we've suffered for nothing. We've bled ourselves dry for a phantom. This is why people faced with such a reckoning often find it easier to recontextualize their situation within the revolutionary framework, rather than admit the plain truth. The prophet doesn't admit his vision was wrong, only that some details were off. True, the second coming didn't happen on the promised day, but I have recalculated, and it will happen on this other day. True, the revolution has not brought about the dictatorship of the proletariat, but fear not, comrades, with my new 5-year plan, better times are right around the corner. True, the fruits of the Second Vatican Council have not materialized, but with a better implementation of the Council and more tinkering with the Church's rights, the springtime of evangelization is sure to emerge. It is, of course, not true that we can't go back. G.K. Chesterton once observed that when we take a wrong turn, the thing to do is turn around and backtrack to where we went off course. It would be foolish to continue to bullheadedly plunge ahead in a mistake on the premise that there's no turning back. Return is, after all, one of the great themes of the gospel. Return to me, and I will return to you, saith the Lord. Recent years have made it plain that the Catholic Church is in the midst of a crisis of identity. Intoxicated with progress, she seeks novelty atop every hill and under every green tree. Of course, traditionalists have been saying this for decades, but the rate of disintegration has become so rapid, the depth of the crisis so acute, that it is becoming evident to most neutral observers. To those most invested in this revolution, the remedy for this disintegration will always be more revolution. To double down on failed measures, to revolution even harder. Vatican II hasn't been implemented yet is the Catholic version of real communism has never been tried. And to people saying these things, there's not much that can be said. But to those of you who are beginning to understand what's going on, whose simple faith has enabled you to see that the emperor has no clothes, I say, return. The first commitment of every human being is to the truth. And while it may be hard to admit that something we have invested in, maybe for decades, has turned out to be a chimera, we must believe the words of Christ that the truth will set you free. And what truth am I referring to? Simply this. The revolution has failed. It has not been let down. It has not been improperly implemented. It has not been hijacked. It has failed because it could not but fail. It was predicated upon faulty principles, that human progress required us to rethink our theology, that traditional rites were hindrances to piety, that liturgy demanded a more horizontal emphasis, that boundless receptivity to the world would rejuvenate the church, and so on. All wrong. Like Chesterton's man who went down the wrong road, the thing to do is to turn ourselves around, figure out where we went off track, and course correct. And this is not fundamentally radical. This is what all Catholic reform movements have always done. Laxity or corruption creeps in, and a reform emerges to undo the damage and restore discipline. If you are Catholic, then the way forward is back. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls.